Hello, everybody. Our friends are starting to join us. Hello, hello. We're
Hello.
gonna some soul retrieval tonight. And this one, we have a lot of notes. Maria, you provided a lot of notes, and I love lots of talking points um, on this topic. And I feel like this one could go pretty in depth. And we were just talking before we went live, like how in depth on certain parts did we want to go, or leave that and be like, hey, maybe we need to do a part two if people are really interested in this, but while I finish updating, Maria, why don't you tell everybody what soul retrieval really is and why it's necessary?
Soul retrieval is reclaiming pieces of your soul, fragmented souls, due to um, any experience of trauma, emotional distress, or life altering events, like a loss of a loved one that was very significant to you. And it is it's like feeling that you are completely lost, something is missing, because definitely a death would be very significant if that person meant a lot to you. And and i i had to go through this because I lost someone that was significant to me, so I knew I had the tools and I knew what was going on. But someone who doesn't know what is going on with them, they feel like an unending chronic sadness, unending chronic, like, what is wrong with me? How come I can't function? How come I don't have the energy? How come I can't think straight? What is wrong with me? It's like something is missing, you feeling off. And it's like you're trying so hard. And then I've also experienced this where I literally see myself going through the day, but I'm disconnected from my body. you know it's like, oh, who is that, what are they doing? So it's just things that happen in your life, and I basically chalk it up to trauma. You haven't really gone through the grief, you haven't really gone through, if you lost a loved one, you haven't really gone through the grief. So a part of that piece of your soul, or fragment of your soul, is stuck, and it needs to be healed, to feel yourself again, to feel a wholeness or a connection, and just bring back a little bit of peace in your life. That's how through my experience, that's how I took it as. I know I put some general notes on it, but it's through my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it can be anything from physical accidents, as a severe or even maybe not severe, like car accident, to where maybe it was just spinning out in the rain. And now you have this new phobia of driving in the rain that you just can't seem to, overcome. Like Maria said, a death of a loved one. Our vets serving in wartime, our armed forces, they are like perfect examples when they're coming back and they're not quite right. They can't seem to leave the desert or wherever they were behind. So that
Hmm.
PTSD. It's like anything that can cause a little fraction of your soul to like and like run away,
Hmm.
and so that you're not yourself, you don't feel right, you can't overcome simple tasks that used to be nothing to you. Sometimes it even can present as like pain spots in the body that you should be healing. Your doctors are like, "Hey, you're making great progress." And you're like, "But I don't feel like I am." Or this still
Hmm.
hurts just as the day that it happened. So it's literally bringing back those little fragments and, bringing it back together, integrating, creating that safety for that healing to fully take place. Um, Hey, everybody joining in.
Hmm.
Questions and comments absolutely are
Please.
welcome,
Hmm.
especially if you've never even heard of this. Feel free to, ask questions. We are here to answer. Um, I know in the shared mystic path that we have both trained in. It was covered there. You mentioned that you also covered it in some of the pranic healing. I
Mhm.
don't feel it so much in the Reiki training that I went through because that's more of like physical energy and body, not so much retrieving stuff. At least how I was, trained. But I'm sure there are other practices, but I know that we have some similar training and what to do. It's kind of one of my favorite things to do for our armed service people because
Mhm.
I feel like they're missing that. Um,
Yeah.
with their therapies and their medicines and that there's just pieces that need to come back.
Mhm.
um Now, how often do you find that you do this for your clients? Because I feel like, at least for me, it's only often for me because of my certain clientele. Do you find that you have to do that as often?
Yes. Yes. Yes, because I do come across some clientels who are going through a crisis in their life, whether it's a loss of a job or even starting a job. Everybody has a certain degree of sensitivity, and everybody's different. No one's ever the same. So usually I would come across, and I have them understand this, and I said, I said trauma is trauma. It
Mhm,
doesn't matter if it's a loss of a job, a loss of a child, a loss of a loved one, or a loss of some of these people are losing their homes because of what's going on with the economy. What now? It's just you did not fail, and I always come across telling them you did not fail. This is something that happened, and so let's get you back into a wholeness. Let you go back into a calm, so we
mhm,
can move forward from this. But yeah, I mean, the clientele that you work with are severely traumatized. you know um but there trauma, it depends on the person how they look at it. If someone loses their job, or their livelihood has changed, it's like, oh my god, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do that? Is a trauma, because now they
mhm,
have to start all over again. you know and I have found out in my past life regression, some of the people that does come to do past life regression, they want to know why they feel this way, why they have this fear, why they have this, and that's fine. And once they get the information, if you guys believe in past lives, if you get the information, they have a little bit of clarity of where this started. You know,
mhm,
um, Also, sometimes, like energy healing, Reiki or any kind of energy healing, we might detect something. And I know you said Reiki, the one that you were trained was mostly physical. Trauma lands in the body, and it creates a blockage. So
mhm.
at that point in time, you may not know where it started, or how it started, or who started it, or what they said to you, or what they did to you. In private healing, we don't care. It doesn't serve you, so we're going to remove it. That's it.
Well, and that's a good point, that our mystic teacher said when he was like training this, and you and I have sat through this multiple times,
Hmm.
this training, that when you have a client come in and either they say, "Hey, I think I need this," or, you're picking up that you need to do this for the client, like, all we want to know is what the experience was. So, hey, death of a loved one 2 years ago. That's all I wanna know. We
Hmm.
don't want you to be stuck in telling the story and telling the story and all of the emotional stuff around it because it gets you stuck sitting in that trauma instead of staying in that space of, "I am ready for this, retrieval and reintegration." So making sure you stay out of telling that story over and over and over and over again. And I'm sure we all know somebody that has had something happen that
Hmm.
becomes their life, right? They're stuck in that moment. They can't move past. That's how they identify. But then they often wonder, why can't I move forward from this? Why isn't my career taking off? Why isn't, I'm feeling better? Why are my relationships starting to deteriorate? It's because you're stuck there. So when you
Mhm.
come in for this type of healing, what the accident was or the trauma, and maybe a date, that's it. Mouth closed. We don't need the rest of the story. You've already lived it. You don't need to stay there.
Mhm.
Stay open for the healing. Um, yeah, it does for some people become a habit, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, they start identifying. And that's when it's a little harder because pulling them out of that identifying trauma takes longer for the healing to work and it slows down that progress. So Divine says, when a worldwide major event like COVID happens, how does that affect how you manage working with a client? It's a worldwide event. It's affecting everybody. How do you manage that for a client?
Well, for me, because I during COVID, that was like 2021 when we started, I have come across with people who I had come across with a client where she lost her father through COVID, but she could not go and be with her father because of the protocols that they have. So she took on that guilt that she wasn't able to say goodbye or even be there. So I had to work with her guilt feelings or whatever it is, and release that first. And I had people who said, "Oh my God, I lost my job when the shutdown happened."
Mhm.
So I had this client who felt like they failed, and I said, "You did not do anything. This is what's going on." So it's like pulling a person out of their own frame of mind and let them see another light, let them see another option. COVID was something that it all affected. It didn't matter what status in life we were, but everyone everyone has a certain degree of sensitivity. People did it for the first time in their lives. They were stuck home to be with their thoughts. Never did that before. So that was hard for them. And so when the shutdown was lifted, they went completely crazy, going out there, just being out, just doing anything. That is not good also. There were people, I know that there were along lines on the liquor stores. People started drinking a lot, addiction happened, you know um so you have to start slowly and pull them out of that, even though it was a worldwide event. Like that person, I started with her guilt of not being able to say goodbye to her father. I had to start that first with her so she can start looking at things clearly.
Yeah, I forget where I heard this, but there's the adage like, I am you, you are me, and I'm the only one in the room, right? So even though it is a massive event, you and that client are the only ones in the room, and reminding them, like, while this was global, this wasn't your fault. You can
Hmm.
affect, being the client, their immediate area and their immediate well being. So, we all cause a ripple in society. So, giving them that extra little, like, light at the end of the tunnel of like, you couldn't be there for your father, but you are here for your immediate family.
Hmm.
And so, giving them that pat on the back, helping them there, and, dealing with then that grief so, they can move on. Big world things, right? We've got a big world thing going on right now for our country affecting, causing issues for a lot of people. I haven't had anybody come in and be like, I need help with this exactly. Um, but that's where it's like, okay, here is your space. What can you affect? How are you staying mentally, emotionally healthy in this and not letting it consume you? And, if pieces, fractures have started, let's kind of get them back in and keep you out of panic. You are in control of your immediate area and your immediate building or your being. And
B.
it's people that are parents, like, it is your job to help your kids feel safe and protected. So we need you to stay out of that. So I think in that instance, it becomes, bringing in that calming, reintegrating those pieces and help like redirect that energy instead of panicking. What do you have control of and what can you make successful here? And,
Mhm.
be thankful of what you have and what you're going with. Um, Emily says, "Hey, friends, totally agree that it's about paradigm shift and changing the way you write your story. With my recent loss, that's been something I had to learn, not over identifying with the story." Yeah. Um, I mean, there are people who just end up identifying with the trauma. And sometimes they feel like it's because nobody's listening.
Mhm.
And that's an important part of the healer work in doing that is we want to listen, but we don't want you to get trapped, stuck in that trauma again. So, it can be long. And sometimes soul retrievals are more than once, right? Because
Yes.
your higher self knows what is safe to bring in. If you've got 20, 30 pieces out there, you're not going to feel very good if all 20 or 30 got rammed back in. It's like a shock.
Mhm.
So it's a slow
No.
process of reintegrating. It's like rebuilding that Lego tower for stability. Um, and making sure everything's nice and smooth and locked in there and steady before you bombard with even more coming in. Maria, you started to say, like, what are hints that somebody might need a soul retrieval?
Well, for me, it was I was everything was off for me. Everything was off. And something was missing and I could not put my hand on it or put my finger on it. So what I being the fact that I was trained, I knew what I needed to do. I was off. I was off. I couldn't get motivated to go through my day. Um, and for me, it was a death of a loved one that was significant to me. So the sadness creeped in, and I could not shake the sadness off. And I knew what I needed to do, but healers ourselves, we're a little bit stubborn in that point.
We make
But
the worst patients.
it's just feeling empty and you're not all there. Something is missing, and you are going through a chronic sadness. You can't shake it off. And it doesn't really have to be a loss of a loved one. Also, it could be you love this car and this happened, and it's completely total, you know, or like some people who lost their jobs. This was something that they had no control over.
Mhm,
So it's just low energy, chronic fatigues, um, the grief that was never addressed.
mhm,
I have come across with a lot of clients who has never addressed the grief or hasn't gone through the grief process. And I always would like them to go through that. And again, if a client cries when I'm having a session with them, I know they're releasing.
mhm.
I know they're
Well,
releasing.
you
Go ahead.
mentioned in the notes, and it seemed I'm like, "Why didn't I think to add that?" And it's so obvious. Having dreams or the feeling that you need to reclaim something.
Hmm. Yeah. You
Y
you haven't your soul has a knowing, and it lets you know when you have dreams. So one of the some practitioners who does dream work also bring in some form of soul retrieval. Just like the inner child work. Some people bring some kind. It's going back to your childhood, the childhood or inner child that was traumatized. you know uh
Mhm,
Meditation, so if you take meditation classes, they go through that also. There's some form where you go and meditate and see yourself as an inner child. Same thing with hypnotherapy, you can do that too.
mhm. I feel like me personally, maybe this is gonna be the hot take debate. The soul retrieval and reintegration process in, like, the energy work and, like, our mysticism, I feel like is slightly different than just meditation or, just a Reiki, right? Because at least for me and how I experience it, like, you are literally getting this soul piece back and you are placing it like back into the spiritual body. And it's almost like doctor work where you have to suture it back in and energetically like meld it back into place. And for me, and I'm like, I don't see meditation really doing all of that. Maybe it could, maybe it could.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, it's always felt more of like a hands-on between the practitioner and the client rather than just going, I want my lost pieces back. Here they are, you know? Um, and this is where you
Well,
have maybe, I'm assuming more experience that way.
yes, Silva, we did a technique. We did a technique. And meditation, when you go into meditation, you're actually aligning with your higher self,
Mhm,
and your higher self is aligned with the God source or divine source is what I like to call it. So when you bring the meditation with the intention of collecting your soul pieces, you
mhm,
know, meditation is going really deep into that. Now, the thing is, are you going to be ready for it? Because I did this and I was completely exhausted. I had to go to bed and sleep. I
mhm.
was exhausted when I did it through meditation, you know, and I had the focus and intention of bringing my soul pieces back. And yes, I shouldn't have done what I did. I asked for all of them to come back, and boy, did they come in.
Exhibit A.
Yeah. And I was really exhausted. So I had to go to bed and I slept through the next day because
Mhm,
that's how much it was like my body was missing those pieces. And all of a sudden they came back and they were like, I can't. I'm just completely exhausted. But
mhm.
you can do it through meditation. Just be prepared to don't ask for all of them to come back. And I did. You have to be careful with your words and your intention. You have to be, because if you're not prepared for it to all come back, you will probably don't even plan anything that night. You're just gonna be sleeping through.
Now I'm reading through the notes about what to expect during a soul retrieval session. And you have listed like some drumming and chanting, some breath work. Um, it's really up to the practitioner who is doing it. And I know when I've done it, it's varied. It also depends on the
Hmm.
client. At one point, myself and a friend, colleague of mine, we were doing like a monthly, like just healing circle. And it was meant to be light and to just like good energy, light fixins here and there, carry on, have a good month type thing. And I ended up doing soul retrieval for a gentleman who was Vietnam vet. And I'm like, well, guess we're doing some hard work right now and like bringing that in. And he was the only one. And so I kind of changed what I was doing, but it was just me, my Kintu, him sitting in a chair, and it was just like this needed to happen for him. That's why he came. And he was the one off, and he and I talked about it later, because he did get emotional. And he's like, you did it a little differently for me. And I'm like, well, that's what you needed, you know.
Hmm.
He's like, I feel such a release. And I'm like, well, good, you know. But it can change. And like I said, for me, depending on the client, what actions, what movements, what pieces I'm working with is going to change depending on what the client, needs. A lot of times I'm playing certain types of music to set that space. And it does sound like chanting, but it's like an El Shaddai type chant. So it is connecting into the soul piece and like keeping me there of like what's going on. And the client, a lot of times will fall asleep. But I know when we were trained, I think Zane did some drumming on part of it. At
Hmm.
one point, there was all sorts of noisemakers that I couldn't wait to stop happening.
We did
Um,
we did do chanting too. We did
yeah.
do chanting before we started. Yeah.
So who knows what you and your practitioner will do for your soul retrieval? when you, a lot of times a client, you're doing nothing other than being open and receive and,
Mhm.
allowing that to come through. But, there's no guarantee that it's gonna be the same. If you come in for a soul retrieval and your friend comes in next week, chances are you're gonna have a very different experience, at least on my table. And I'm sure Maria with yours too. Um,
Yes. 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 Sometimes I like if I have a client that signed up a schedule, a pranic healing, in the middle of it, I'm doing, I'm collecting their pieces. In the
mhm,
middle of it, I stop and I start taking my healing kin too, and I put them right there in their hands, and I place it, where it needs to be placed on the navel. And sometimes when I call their soul pieces, I call the soul pieces that's needed now for them to get to the next step. I don't call for all the soul pieces to come back. I
mm.
don't think Zane specified that.
I don't remember if he did or not. I know that's just
Mhm.
something I intuitively have, done. It's what's needed right now for this moment of healing.
Mhm.
Uh, and this was an instance, at least with that gentleman, he did not say, this just came through.
Mhm.
So, no worries if you're like, I feel like I need one, but I don't know what the event was. Okay, that's even better because you're not stuck in that trauma of
Yeah.
reliving
Yeah.
it. So it's almost better that way.
Mhm.
But
Because you're not expecting it. You're not
mhm,
expecting it, and you're not having some kind of resistance towards it. I love it when they don't have that resistance because it's easier for me to do what I need to do. And then if Spirit said, get your healing kin to, I get my healing kin to.
mhm,
Um, because I do call, I don't know about you, but I do call a lot of my assistants from my ancestors and my guides to come in. And I'm focusing on the client. So I do call them in and they direct me. And like I said, they can sign up for pranic healing. And in the middle of that, they said, grab your healing kin too. And I
mhm.
start grabbing it. And then I start calling in some of their soul pieces, not all of it.
And I know, some of the clients after having this happen, like, sometimes lost memories are coming back,
Hmm.
emotions that they haven't felt in a while because they finally need to be processed. Those emotions for that moment had, left when that soul piece fractured off. So it's finally addressing that incident that happened to cause that fracture. And sometimes that also means the memories that are finally coming through to finish incorporating that piece in and like locking it into place in that healing way, not just trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. Like it's there where it needs to be. It's been smoothed out. It's been taken care of. It is now back, you know, not duct taped, electrical tape and, some gorilla glue. Like it needs to be. We do not recommend Gorilla Glue with soul
No.
retrieval. I will probably end up gluing part of myself with the Gorilla Glue because I'm clumsy about it. But I have found the most common thing are the memories that pop up for them as it's happening, and sometimes it'll even tap into like some past life stuff that will bring it through. Um, so it's an interesting process. I think that's one of my favorite things to do in the healing because it's so expansive
Hmm.
and it's like the most gratifying in a way, just because it's like such an interlocking healing that happens. Um, it's part of my ego showing up like that's my favorite piece. But um, I feel like the client gets the most out of those in the in the broad scope of
Hmm.
things.
Yes. I like what you said about the memories because I find that when the dots are starting to connect,
Mhm,
and then they have a clarity. They have a clarity. Um, Sometimes the memories may not be as good, so sometimes I end up talking to my clients after a healing session. They're releasing, they're crying, um, and and then the next, it's like a layer of onions. You release one thing, there's another thing coming in. So I have, some of them, they might have feelings of anger or guilt, or so I have to talk them through, so they have an understanding of what happened, and I usually tell them, please be gentle with yourself. you know
Mhm.
do not ponder. Once the memories come in, I said, it happened, it's in the past. Who you are now is who you were, no longer who you were before. So I kind of make sure they understand that, this, because some of them are, when they start remembering, especially when it comes to childhood trauma, and they start remembering, it can be very devastating for them. And
Mhm.
their anger is just starts building up.
Yeah, and that's part of the healing is helping dissipate that anger. It's
Hmm.
okay to feel it, but you don't want that to become the new way of being. It almost undoes part of that healing because now you're back into a distress instead of
Hmm.
in that
Hmm.
healing. And I think a good thing, not in our notes, but this is just coming to mind. I think people who have had their traumatic experiences in a younger time, and it's been years, and you've learned to live a certain way with that loss, right? So you've built this
Hmm.
personality around. And then when you have that healing, you feel different and it can be scary
Hmm.
because you feel different and you're not used to it. And that's okay. Like it's okay to be a little off, feel like I don't know how to feel in this new me. And that's not wrong, but it's the new healed you, and you'll learn to feel lighter, to feel more, complete and more whole and just more healthy all the way around by doing that. But I think it's good to point out that you may not feel comfortable right away, possibly because you learn
Hmm.
to live for so long in that state, right? You learn to cope.
Hmm.
So now you have new skin and new healing to work out, and that's important, to not try to negate that and make yourself feel the way you used to because you're putting yourself right back into that traumatic experience. And this was something that we were kind of talking about before. Like, do we get into in the mysticism path when you're calling those pieces, you know, um, Pachamama guards those pieces. Pachamama loves
Hmm.
us, she guards us, Pachamama Gaia, however you would want to refer to her. She is like our ultimate, like, earthbound mother here. And she loves and protects us. And when our soul fractures off, little pieces of her gathers those up and holds them safe until you're ready to take them back. Now,
Hmm.
in part of that training, it's like because she is guarding that, when you as the healer approach to take that, it might come off as like scary, goblins, demons, gargoyle, but those are just the protectors. And when you prove that you are there on the betterment of the client, then she will release them. And so that's why I'm like, if you're new to this and have never done this, maybe have some help and guidance, if you go down that road, to know what to do. But I love the fact that Pachamama is like, "I have this for you, and I will safeguard it until you are ready."
Hmm.
She holds it in dear. So your pieces are not lost and gone forever. They're not that missing puzzle piece from the thrift store. Um, she has them, and she is guarding them and loving them until you're ready to take them back. Did know, like, the addictions or compulsive behaviors used to fill a void, especially when that happens after a traumatic experience, right? And by no means are we replacing any medical, physical doctor advice. Do not replace one for the other. If you so choose, use them in conjunction together, not in place
Hmm.
of. Please
Hmm.
keep taking your prescribed medications and see your regular doctor visits. And please do not compare your traumatic experience to somebody else's, one being more traumatic than the other. That is not the point.
No, no. And there's absolutely no judgment. If you ever go to a practitioner, any kind of practitioner, there is no judgment. You know, this is where you are. You're trying to get some answers. and get some healing done, there's
Mhm.
absolutely no judgment. Because I have come across like every single person does have a degree of sensitivity. Some person are strong enough to withstand a car crash, lose their car, and they move on. You know, they may have a little bit of soul pieces there, but they move on. Some people, they're just stuck there and they just don't know how to get out of that.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so you know, for healers, and I know you mentioned, I think you mentioned it, Melissa, you have to know where your client is at, how we can move forward.
Mhm.
So, but that doesn't mean that you're going to keep telling your story over and over and over and over. If you want to tell your story, just give us the highlights. That's it. I
Mhm.
don't want, you know, I don't need a story. I'm just there to help you. Let's move this energy. Let's remove this energy of the void there, and then just put in your soul piece back to make you whole. I
Yeah, it's
just
like
don't need, yeah, I just don't need a novel like the novel I gave Melissa, but my notes.
that the little bit of highlights is enough to know, like, after the pieces are acquired, the healing that needs to come after to help integrate them back in more so.
That's
Um,
interesting. Okay.
at least for me. But in a way too, it's like we don't have to know the story again. If you feel like you need one, you don't know why, you just, that's great. And like we said earlier, that's almost kind of the best way because you're not stuck in it and reliving it. And then it is our job as the healer to find those pieces and bring them in. And then we get the information as we're working. We may not need to know that you were a part of 9/11. We may not need to know that you lost multiple members of your family in some situation. We just know now that there's unresolved grief, there is the abandonment, and
Hmm.
that's what we're going to help take care of when integrating and smoothing those and bringing that in. So uh, in a soul retrieval, can generational trauma show up? Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. Thank you for the
Yes.
question, Divine.
Yes.
Do you wanna address that
I
one?
sh- yes. Yes. I have come across a few clients that have generational that have popped up in their lives. Um, I had to. One of them was actually two family members together, and they had experienced this. But I did it separately when I did the healing for them, only because their sensitivity level might be different. So if a so I will never do hypnosis of soul pieces as a group. Never. Because everybody has a different type of sensitivity and everybody has different issues. But yes, I have seen in soul retrievals, I have seen generational traumas that showed up.
Mhm. And the slow retrieval is a great way to stop it finally, right?
Hmm.
Um, the trauma can be ways of behavior. I think we're all familiar with the saying about, abusive parents were abused when they were younger, right? And they just keep carrying that on. So,
Addiction
working.
also.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So, working through there, and healing that person, that instance. And I don't think we've touched on this yet in this talk, but how it ripples, right? So it ripples through the time. It's a way to help send healing back to ancestors, because if it's coming through them and it's repetitive and you're the one finally saying, I'm going to address this because I don't want to live like this anymore, you're stopping it. And that connection ripples back as well. So, generational trauma, absolutely. And
Hmm.
great way, the soul retrieval process to heal it and stop it and making sure it doesn't continue, into the next. We are all going to be somebody's ancestors someday.
Hmm.
Supposed to. So,
And what I love about the generational healing, when the trauma pops up, and when I'm doing a session and generational trauma comes up, what I love about it is that once we start clearing that, it will benefit the future generations. So if you have children, if you have, and it's the family collective. Okay, so if you have children, you have niece and nephew, it's gonna benefit the future generation.
mhm.
So when you get to that point, like, okay, this needs to stop. This cycle is just crazy. Um, you can be the conduit. We will you come there for a healing, yes, for yourself, but you also having the next generation in the family bloodline to have the benefit also. And that's what I love about it.
Now next week, let me go to my other tab of notes. Uh, we are going to have a guest on with us. We're going to get into fairy working with our friend Kayla Ray. She was on with us a couple weeks ago about alien energies and working with them for healing. Not all aliens are bad. Not even all reptile aliens are bad. And they usually get the bad rap, right? And they're like, no, not all of them. Just like humans, there's good and bad. She also works with them little fairies. And so she's going to jump on with us next week, 7 o'clock, over working with the fairies and using them in some healing work, which is going to be all new to me. I'm usually the one yelling at them in the store for misplacing things, knocking things over, you know. Um, I don't work with them much, as you can tell.
No, I don't too. I don't. I know they're elementals, but I
Mhm.
really don't work with them much. I think they're cute, cute little bug, very
Yeah.
powerful little ones. But
Yeah.
no,
To pick Kayla's brain over on fairies and working with them. And I'm automatically thinking like, oh, gardening and creating sacred space outside and, how to work with them that way. But I'm sure she's going to expand on that more than even that. So, but yeah, if you're into fairies, join us next week. The week after that, we are going to have Kathy Fedetik on with us. She is multi-talented in her energy healing. And if you are familiar with the Mansfield Reformatory, that has been in many movies and is like the big haunted prison here in Ohio, she is behind that massive yearly parapsychon. And we were just out there vending a couple weeks at that. So she's going to talk about energy healing during and after haunted investigations and haunted locations and how best to keep your energy straight and working with the spirits and the land and the buildings that they're in and all sorts of fun. So I'm excited that she's got time to come on with us for that. It's going to be exciting. She spends a lot of time down there in Mansfield. um, So I'm like, "Hey, can you sneak me into those places when you see? I wanna go see the ghost." But,
um,
yeah, so we have fairies next week and then haunted, energy work the week after. So we've got some fun topics coming up for you guys on Tuesdays, wherever you're watching us now, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So,
and bring your questions. Bring your questions. I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with paranormal. I know a little bit of it. I haven't really gone in, but yeah, bring your questions.
yeah. But, well, thanks for joining us, guys. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, they're all available on YouTube to go back and watch. And you can always ask questions from previous on our lives too. We'll answer those because we like talking about it and we like visiting and meeting and talking with our like minded friends here. So,
Yes.
all right, guys. Well, hopefully we get to see you next Tuesday at 7. And we look forward to seeing you then. Bye, guys.
Bye. Good night.